Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Marcin, Agrypnie, Grenzgänger. Song where it's either A, staccato riff spiraling into a never-ending cycle of tension and release, the bass, drums, guitar, and keys clawing for control, or B, it just feels that way for me, but I don't know what I'm talking about without musical education. It's supposed to be an emoji there, and OBS does not like emojis, apparently. So, this is going to be wild. I mean, we've checked out Agrypnie in the past. I remember having a lot of appreciation for their last track, but it also being a lot. So let's dive into this and see what they're bringing to the table today. Certainly nailed the fact that they're staccato riffs. That's all we've had. Two chords. Ooh. So a lot of this has the same root tone. Yeah. There's the shift, and then a shift on that, but the root of that stays the same too. These moments of levity too that break up the heavier sections. That fill taking us into this blast beat section, the double bass kicks.
Bescheid, wer
there's a twilight element to the highest pitch notes. There's the blast beats, piercing through the noise. Okay. Bringing back the drum pattern from the intro. Bit of a pained yell there. There's a warmth in those synths back there though. Just basking in it. Really cool cymbal work off on the side too. I was trying to visualize how that drum part was played, and I was wondering if maybe they were trading twos, da, 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 and so you can hit different parts of the kit, but I think it was all one hand, because off on the left there's a very syncopated rhythm on a cymbal that would be, at least in my mind, difficult to shift back and forth. Easier just to do the syncopation on one hand with the blast beats on the other. Yeah, dude. It's kind of a beautiful track. By the end of it, it takes some time to grow into that. But it does reach a very beautiful part. And I think a lot of it comes down to the synth work in the background. There's something about those chords that are being played that embody this purity, this beautiful comfort. But it takes a long time for the track to get there, and it looks through a lot of different sections before we can find this piece, because the rest of the band hasn't really changed at this point. In fact, I'd say that musically, from the metal band perspective, this is probably the most intense part of the track. We brought back the staccato focused riffage and drum patterns from the beginning, but we also have the blast beats on top of that. The guitars, they're just chugging along, full eighth notes, I think, going on there. It is completely driven, but the synths elevate it. It pulls it out from beneath and rises. Not in an escalation kind of way, but to be removed from the murkiness of the ground, to be distanced from the filth. that's how I get that ending. It's really interesting because it feels incredibly heavy, like it should be pressing down, and yet it's rising. There's elevation to rise above something, whatever that may be. But it does take a long time to get there, and we go through several different vibes. I do believe that Marson was correct in their analysis of, well, certainly the beginning and the ending of this track. It's staccato riffs that spiral into never-ending cycles of tension and release. A lot of this track is based around 2 chord progressions: tension and release. And there's certainly a lot of staccato sounds going on in here. Staccato, for those who don't know, is short and abrupt. Dat, 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 dat. That's staccato. We have quick staccato ideas in, again, the intro and the outro. And I thought it was very cool when the bass kick brought the intro pattern back that the guitars would eventually latch onto, so that the drummer can push into the constant bass kicks and those ridiculous blast beats. A nice way of introducing a callback and then passing it off to an instrument who's going to drive it through to the end, so that the introducing instrument can bring something else from another part of the track, which was the blast beats from the middle. So we reintroduce aspects all across the track into this big finale, this big epic at the end. I do think it's interesting, though, that Marson describes it as the instruments clawing for control. I never really felt like this song was going off the rails, like it was losing control. It always felt intensely focused to me. And that's one of the cool things about art. Different people can hear different things in it. And neither one of us could be in line with the artistic intent, or maybe Marson is, or maybe I am. That's one of the cool things about art. It means something different to everyone. So I can see the idea, though, of the instruments trying to rein in, particularly the drums. They're the most driven, most chaotic part of this entire track. But by the end of the song, everyone's kind of working within this, and that hyper focus on this aggression, on this layering, on this, rhythmic cadence. It's all elevated by the synth. It's working together to rise above. So that's how I read that. But there's also the growth throughout the track. I mentioned that we have callbacks from all throughout. I think it was interesting to listen to how the song evolved. We had sections that were more driven. The beginning of the song introduces our core rhythmic motif. But it isn't long until we have just a beautiful lower energy section, just kind of bringing down the aggression for a moment and exploring a moment. This was a bit mixed for me because I think harmonically we're still dealing with some of the more metallic chords. There is still a general aggression to the sound here from a purely compositional standpoint, but production-wise, that energy is plummeted. We just have 2 guitars, but I also listened to the timbres of the guitars, and there's something beautiful in there too. Once the layers start coming up and we create something a bit more dense, these higher pitched tones are cutting through everything still, like a twinkling of stars, light at the end of the tunnel. A beautiful, majestic view within a pitch black element. But then I listened to the chords, and this tells a little bit of a different story here. This was where I was talking about the heavy use of a consistent root tone, where the first chord is, just for visualization, this is our root note, the lowest note in the chord. But then our second chord is this. The root note hasn't changed. We come back to that first one, then the root note shifts, and then we have another shift in the chords, or in the notes above the roots. This is really interesting because it gives a sense of tension and release. These two chords here are certainly release to tension back to release, but they're all represented within a feeling of home. The root doesn't change. It represents a consistent quality to all of it. This is then put on a larger scale. This is the macro, or sorry, the micro. We look at the macro, where we have this note, and now we have this note. This new note also has its release to tension. That final chord is really tense. It is the tensest of the entire movement, and then we reset everything, going back to the most consonant sound, that first root note, and the stable sound on top of that. So we have tension and release within the chord to chord, but we also have tension and release from the two different home notes that we have in this. Technically, yeah, I guess it is 4 chords. 1, 2, 1, 3, 4. Yeah. But through all of this, we have this feeling of home, of not really venturing too far from a place where we find comforts, a place that we find familiar. They could have easily done 4 completely different chords here, and they chose to retain a note throughout most of them. I find that to be rather interesting too. A sort of tension and release through safety. Sort of like when the child is learning how to ride a bike. They still have the training wheels on, but also the parent holds the bike for them, and then the parent releases the bike, and now they're just biking on their own. It is a controlled tension. The child's still not going to fall. Those training wheels are going to hold tight, but the child doesn't necessarily know that. Their one safety net is gone, and yet they're doing this. And that's kind of what I get here with that root tone never changing. It's a feeling of safety within this clashing sounds above it. My guess is that the final 2 chords, they couldn't really get the effect they wanted without changing the root tone entirely to add to the distress of the final 2 chords, to really lean into that contrast against the first 3 chords. Otherwise, I honestly think they could probably get away with just doing that same home tone the entire time, but it also might have felt too flat to them, which is why they went for this too. I don't know if there's much that I should read into that final ending to it. I think that's more of a functional component to the writing process. But I love this feeling here. And then the thing is, though, we've created this concept of safe danger. And then we expand on it. We bring in big guitars around these chords. We bring in big drums. We bring in the blast beats. We bring in the 16th note bass kicks. We bring in the growling. We bring the intensity back up to the 10 that we had coming into it, but we retain these chords at the bottom of all of that. I'm really curious what the lyrics are going to be about on this one, or maybe alternatively what their intentions were with this track, because this middle section is something kind of unique we don't hear too often within metal. Sure, metal has high and low points to their music, but this idea of a retained root tone, creating this feeling of like controlled danger, I don't think this is a topic I've ever brought up on the channel. But to me, it's clear as day right here. So that's pretty cool. I suppose the only other thing I want to bring up then is general pacing, vocal work. There was this one yell in here. I think I pointed it out in the reaction that really stood out to me. It was a rather emotional delivery that normally I don't get from metal-styled harsh vocals. And honestly, I don't really get a lot of emotional connection to the rest of the vocal delivery on this. It was really just this one moment. The vocals do kind of sit within this quasi-yell realm, though. It almost feels a bit punkier than metallic. It fits. It's an interesting mix that I think sells a little bit of unique elements to this. It feels Agrypnie. in a way that maybe if it was a more traditional black metal scream or death metal scream wouldn't have, or a growl even. It adds a little bit of character to the sound. I appreciate that. The overall pacing of this, it's all highs and lows. Everything in here is contrast, whether it is tension and release contrast in the moment, or when we look at section to section. This is a roller coaster ride full of highs and lows, but always building. The transitions are always there to help let things down or let things up, pull things up. Anyways, it's always designed to create a fluid motion. Whether it is something simple as a decrescendo to bring the volume down so we can do something quieter, or the drums, introducing 16th note bass kicked at the very tail end of a drum fill, because that's where we're going. That was one of the wildest drum fills I've ever heard, because it is kind of shocking, almost as shocking as just getting straight into the 16th note bass kicks. But we didn't. It was a beat and a half, I believe, prior to that. A little way of introducing that sound, but also the drum fill leading up to that final bit of the fill had some acceleration in it, but nothing told me we were going to ramp it up into overdrive, and yet it does. The instrumentation is rather calm here too. So it's surprising, catches me off guard, pulls the rug out from under me, but is also foreshadowing and helps transition between sections. It's a really nice midpoint between the jump scare of the jagged transition, just moving from one thing to another, strictly, here's the dividing line, we were doing this, now we're doing this, but also finding the midpoint between that kind of style and something a bit smoother of introducing an idea beforehand, of ramping up into an idea. It kind of captured the best of both worlds. I quite enjoyed a lot of this track. I don't know if there was any specific emotion I would tie to a lot of this. It's all very metallically aggressive. The feelings of tension and release are there, but what kind of tension? I didn't really feel anxiety or animosity or fear or guilt. It just feels metallically edgy. The tension is just edge. And as usual, that's a skill issue on my part. Metal still just sounds like metal to me, man. One of these days I want to break through that barrier, and certainly more I don't know if I'd want to call them expressive, but harmonically exploratory metal bands, I certainly can feel emotional writing within. But I feel like it's kind of a 50-50 toss-up, whether I'm going to hear something emotional in it or if it's just going to sound kind of metal to me. And this one leans into that metal side. So if anyone else feels a specific emotion while listening to this, let me know. I'm all ears. I'd love to hear someone else's perspective on it. Let me take a chance to read take a moment to read some lyrics here, and then we're going to wrap this one up. Lyrically, we're looking at somebody who they've run out of options, they're a bit desperate, and they're also being tortured. It says, eyes blinded, hearing deaf, battered body, crouching on knees, the spirit adrift spills from the abused shell. Every cry dies in the torn throat. The rest of this track focuses on pretty much this concept of being the weaker person within an engagement and not really having not many courses of action to rectify the situation, sort of being at the total whim of the abuser here. It talks about their will being broken, that the other person's mind is trapped in a spell of rage, but before the narrator, the abyss closes and there is no path that leads home. They feel disheartened and alone. Says they're hidden in the shadows, patiently lying in wait, treacherously following my every step. You're driven by hatred and corruption. Your tormenting presence is a silent threat. says, restlessly you roam the borderlands, searching for me. You know my weakness, and it awakens my desires. You grin maliciously as you stand close to me. So our narrator is just not in a position of power over the people who are tracking them, and the other people are malicious. They have hatred. They enjoy hurting people like the narrator. Without any other context, this just seems to be a story. Could mean a lot of things. It could be related to a lot of things. It is simply just about one person and another person's control and the abuse that they succumb to in this position, and how disheartening it is and how they don't see any way out of it. Then I looked up the title of the track and its translation to see if that would give me any indication to specifics about this. And Grenzgänger translates to border crossing. And I wonder then what all of this is about. At least in my mind, with that title, it seems to be someone who might be illegally trying to enter into a country. Maybe they have to, maybe the life behind them isn't worth returning to. It is interesting, though, in this moment, they say no path leads home. Maybe for a moment, going back to where they came from actually seems better than their situation here. But regardless, some sort of guard or patrol has found them and enjoys the physical abuse that they are doing to this person who is just seeking a better life. That's how I read this. It is about, what is it called? Power. I can't think of this word. Power discrepancy. One person has a lot more power over the other, and they're emotionally engaged in the situation. Again, they're filled with hatred, and that fuels the experience of the other, of our narrator. I don't know if that's necessarily what they're going for. The lyrics do paint sympathy for the prisoner, though. And I assume, as they say, they restlessly roam the borderlands. I don't know if that's more of a direct translation of the German word here. This is translated from German, by the way. But it seems that they are between places. There tends to be not a lot of power when you are between places, though. So we have power discrepancy. I think that's what I was aiming for earlier. And sympathy for our narrator here. That's what I get out of these lyrics. Tying them back to the music, I mean, I guess just the escalation of it all. There's an intensity to this song that I certainly feel in the lyrics too. But I wonder what's up with the end. I had talked about a feeling of uplift, of rising above with those final synths, and that is not what I get from the lyrics at all. This is a grim finale. And it does not end with an ending, but it does imply worse things ahead for our narrator. So I'm kind of curious, does anyone else have a different take on this track? Maybe you heard something different musically, particularly regarding the ending, maybe something that would line up with the lyrics a bit better. I don't know. If you have any other thoughts, opinions, perspectives on this, let me know. Toss all that into the comment section below, along with anything else you'd like to add to the conversation. Above that, in the description box, is a link for Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today, but I'll be back next time, tomorrow. I don't know why I said next time. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.